Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class today. Jason is engineering the broadcast at Genesis Communications Network in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you would like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen lines up, 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
I am doing well. I'd like to share something with you before we get started. Guineith, I know how this is all going to end. It's the sum of all individual greed combined with the sum of all individual stupidity. And here's an example. So in Florida, last month, in Volusia County, there was a couple, and they went out to eat. They came home from going out to eat, and they just wanted to get inside because it was raining. In their haste, they forgot to push the off button on their car. So the car sat in the garage all night, emitting exhaust fumes, silently poisoning the entire house. Well, it's okay. Their cat woke them up. Now, they were weak from inhaling so much carbon monoxide, they were barely able to call 911, but they got the call. The fire department got them oxygen. All is well. The cat saved their lives. Now, the whole point of this is these people are so stupid. Number one, they bought a car with push-button start, remote start. So you just push the button. The engines are so quiet, you don't hear them run very much. I mean, they're really quiet, no question about it. But they pull in their garage and they forget to shut off their car because they have technology that lets them walk around with a key fob in their pocket, remote start, and they can just walk up to their door handle, and the car locking system, the alarm system, senses their proximity and allows them to just open the door because the key is transmitting microwave frequencies or FM radio frequencies like 300 megahertz. That's actually not microwave, just below microwave. High frequencies out of their pocket, right next to their genitals, to their car. The car communicates with the key fob, and they can just open the handle. And then they can just touch a button, and boom, the engine starts right up. That's great. I can't believe it. So these people are stupid enough to buy into that technology. And then they drive home from a restaurant. Obviously, they can't cook their own meals. They drive home, and the one thing they want to do is get out of the rain. They're in their own garage. They're in their own garage. They want to get out of the rain, and they are poisoning themselves. If they're in their own
garage, aren't they out of the rain?
Yeah, that's what I thought. If they're in the garage, they're out of the rain. But that, they weren't thinking about that. So they close the garage door, and here's another thing. You see, there's a building code in the United States that says you cannot have an air intake for a hot air or air conditioning system in the garage. So you can have air coming into... Right. So exactly how did these fumes get into their living quarters? I don't know. But I did see the vent for the air inlet into the garage. So Obviously, they have some kind of a leak, or their system wasn't put in according to code, or something is seriously wrong. But these people are so stupid that they are indirectly or inadvertently killing themselves because of their own carelessness plus their own stupidity for buying this car in the first place. Why would anybody buy a vehicle that doesn't have a key that you put in the ignition and turn? Why would somebody buy one that can be hacked remotely without a key, electronically hacked? That car can be stolen. Unbelievable. So I think this is how it's all going to end. Just add this couple to the heap of stupid people, and that's how it's going to end. Not paying attention, carelessness, recklessness, lack of concern.
Yeah, Darwin Awards.
Yeah.
Darwin Awards, as they say.
Well, they can't win because they can't win because they didn't kill themselves. Almost. They were a runner-up.
Yeah. You know what a Darwin Award is?
Yeah, it's improving the gene pool.
For excellence. It's an award for excellence in natural selection.
Right. It's improving the gene pool. It's improving the gene pool by people killing themselves through their own stupidity.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh. Yeah, anyway, this week, for the first hour, I think I would like to focus on what has been happening in the Gentleman of Fortune's weekly news. Would that be okay, Vincent?
That's wonderful. I got my copy. I read it this morning. And what we're talking about is the newsletter that Guineith Isaacs writes. And if you want to see how well she writes, that will show you. Absolutely brilliant writing. And that's an understatement. So please continue, Guineith.
Okay. And by the way, if anybody wants a free copy, they can send me an email on Guineith@gmail. That's Guineith @gmail.com, and I will send you a free sample copy. Okay, and that will be the latest edition, just so that you can see what we're talking about and the quality of writing. And also, if you go to USA Prepares, there is a link there which will take you to a page where you can subscribe to the newsletter, okay? And the payment's through PayPal, so I don't have to have your credit card number or anything like that. And it's a lot of fun. It's not like any newsletter that's probably been written in about the last 300 years, is what I can say, okay? It's not entirely serious. The subject matter is fairly serious. It's basically a newsletter about all the criminal activity that's going on out and about in the universe, and it has gone on. And this week, to start with, we've got a new section in the newsletter, which, I have to tip my hat and give a salute here to my dear friend Rich Scheben, because he was the one who suggested this. So big shout out there to Rich Shealy. He suggested that I have a survival section in the newsletter. And so this week we've got a new section in the newsletter. And the whole newsletter has got a pirates, highwaymen, and outlaws theme. Okay? And so the name of the survival section is called Buccaneering 101. Because what the Buccaneers were mostly all about was survival no matter what. So you could put these guys in the Caribbean, in Africa, you could put them in a desert, you could put them up in the middle of Newfoundland, and they would survive. So, or you could put them in the middle of a town or in the middle of a pirate ship. They were just born survivors. And so this new section is called Buccaneering 101. And this week, in that section of the newsletter, we deal with what to do to feed your dogs when you haven't quite got enough money to feed your dogs. So, and especially if you have a number of dogs and not much money coming in. And you know what you do for them, Vincent?
Well, actually, I do. You look for roadkill.
Yes. And you make them a big, big pot of soup. You know, but exactly how to do that, there's got to be a special way. There's certain things that you have to do, and there's certain things that you have to take into account with a dog's digestion. And so we'll leave people to find that out in the newsletter. But as well as that, we've got a section in the newsletter which is from the captain's desk. And this section of the newsletter is current events, which is happening now in the world of crime, basically all over the world, but specifically here in Victoria, because I don't know, Melbourne, Victoria in particular, and also the city of Melbourne, our wonderful capital, has always had a bit of a reputation as being a bit of a wild place to be. So this week, it's all about, the whole newsletter just about, is criminal activity specifically in Victoria. And this week in Victoria, we have had some breaking news. There has been a really groundbreaking revelation, and there was a lady, an informant, and her name is called Informer 3838, or Lawyer X, and her name has been kept secret for many, many years, and she has basically gotten herself into just a little bit of trouble. Wouldn't you say that, Vincent?
Yeah, I certainly would. And please tell us more. It's quite interesting. Well, we're going to a break.
Okay.
But after we come back from the break, tell us more about this lawyer. By the way, class, my parents liked just about all of my friends when I was growing up, except for one person they didn't like. That guy turned out to be a lawyer. Seriously. My parents had quite extraordinary intuition. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs is with us, and she's teaching us about the contents of her newsletter. And you can sign up for it by, well, you can get a trial sample. Just send her an email, Guineith, Guineith, @gmail.com. And just let her know that you'd like a sample copy, and she'll get one right out to you. And it'll be the current issue, the complete current issue, not just part of it, not just the teaser. Guineith, please continue.
Okay. Yeah, so this woman is, I'll say that she is a woman. She's finding herself in quite a bit of hot water. I'm not going to give away everything that she's done, but she has ratted on 386 of her mafia underworld clients, including Muslims, including Calabrians. And then she kind of complains that she doesn't really feel very comfortable right now. You know something, Vincent? I've got no sympathy for her.
So let's see if we've got this right, Guineith. We've got a lawyer who was allegedly defending the mafia, protecting the mafia. She turns coat.
Oh, she was.
Yeah.
Yeah. She
turns coat.
Her career, that's what she was known for. She turncoated.
Yeah. She turned coat, and then she ratted out her customers, her clients. And now as you said, she feels uncomfortable. I think she's a walking dead person based on what she did.
Yeah,
Does that sound reasonable?
I'd be inclined to agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially in Melbourne, you've got to put this in context. We have comparatively recently, like within the last 7 to 10 years, come out of a multi-decades-long underworld war in Melbourne, where there were maybe, 20 really, really senior mafia kingpins died as a result of this mafia war. The sort of hits in public that you might see in a Hollywood movie, drive-by shootings, people having a cup of coffee in a cafe and somebody walking up behind them and just putting, projectiles into the back of their head at point-blank range and this sort of thing. And, some of these people, as well as that, were her clients, and also getting bashed to death in prison, getting stabbed in prison, and this sort of thing. And some of these people were clients. And, it's sort of, you could make the argument that perhaps some of the blue team might have, paid somebody maybe to go and, make life really inconvenient for this drug lord who happens to be serving a 30-year sentence. It's like there's so much detail in it. I can't possibly say it all on air. Go to USA Prepares. It's got the link there to get the subscription to the newsletter. If you want a free copy of the newsletter, give me an email on that email address. That's guineith @gmail.com. That's guineith @gmail.com. But yeah, that's the big news. And they, just a side issue. Normally, when the powers that were want to bury something, normally they put out the press release at about 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, so that the news will be released. Maybe just reaching the 5 o'clock news on Friday, but usually it's too late for that. So usually what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to put it on the Saturday news. And, no one listens to the Saturday news because they're all too busy getting drunk and watching football. That's the generally dumb public I'm talking about.
Right, GDP. We'll be right back with Guineith Isaacs in Australia. Guineith Isaacs is with us. Guineith, I remember stories that my father-in-law told me when he was alive. And when he said when he was a young man, actually a young boy, he would be in the streets of the city on the East Coast, and he met some of the very, very famous gangsters. I mean, really famous gangsters. I mean, the top 10. And he said they were all really nice people. They, they'd see these boys, and they'd hand them a dime or a quarter, which was a lot of money back then, and they'd take some time and talk to them and be nice to them. And that's what they were like, according to my father-in-law. And I believed him. I think he was right.
Yep, I would tend to agree with you. Even the most vile of them, okay, that I have met, when you first meet them, they seem like really, really nice people. I've also met some fairly, I've actually become friends with a number of quite high-level underworld figures because of my husband Archie. They were his friends. And also I've met one of his enemies, and that was Mick Gatto. And at the time, we, didn't click who each other were, which was perhaps fortunate, because I don't think things would have gone well if we had realized who each other were at the time. And but you know something, when I met him, he actually was very, very civil to me. But he's a complete piece of work. He is a total snake in the grass. And it was afterwards that I clicked, and it was actually one of my children who told me, "Mum, do you know who that just was?" And I said, "No, who was that?" And he said, "Oh, look at the number plate on his car." Let's just say he's got personalised plates on his vehicle and a big ego. Okay, I'm not going to reveal the number plate of his vehicle, but he's got personalised plates and a big ego, and I think that says enough.
Sure.
Yeah. Mick Gatto's a really, really interesting guy on a number of fronts. He, according to my husband Archie, okay, and this has also been verified by another person who was there on the day, okay, who was with my husband at the time, who I had a conversation with afterwards, and I'm not going to name names there, but I believe that Mick Gatto is probably the reincarnation of Shalona Ogle, and I'll tell you why. Shalona Ogle is famous for killing Bartholomew Roberts, and he killed Bartholomew Roberts by shooting him in the throat with grape shot. Okay, this is how reincarnation works. In this lifetime, according to my husband Archie, Mick Gatto tried to shoot him with a shotgun while he was on a painting job in Geelong. And like I say, you don't have enough evidence. It was years ago. There's no way that the cops would do anything anyway, because personally, okay, this is just my intuition. Personally, I believe that he's being protected by the blue team. Okay, that's just my personal observation there. Once again, yes, there's no way that you could prove it for certain, but, you're a big person, you've got common sense. But how's that for, in one lifetime, for this fellow to actually shoot my Archie in that lifetime and kill him in that lifetime? I'm talking about 300 years ago when Archie was Robert. And then in this lifetime, he tries the same thing and fails. And Archie goes on to, he lived probably another, he would have lived over 20 years after that assassination attempt. But, you've got to realize that if you're not a really, really nice person in the underworld, you don't live long, because there's a lot of people who are really, really well armed. And once again, natural selection operates quite heavily. And you usually find that the people who are in the senior levels of various cartels, they usually have excellent people skills. Because if you don't have good people skills, you're going to have somebody come up behind you and decide you might be a good subject for their next round of target practice. So you've also got to have good business skills, because you are actually operating a business. You've got to manage cash flow, you've got to manage human resources, and you've got to, you've just got to operate with a bunch of wisdom on so many different levels. And, I would actually have more respect, and I would rather have to deal with a high-level underworld boss than if I had to deal with the police. Because then you know what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with the mafia, you know what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with the cops, they might be all nice to your face, and then as soon as your back's turned, they're going to completely turn on you, rat on you, and do everything they can to put you away. The cops are so two-faced, I hate them. The mafia guys, if they want to kill you, they're going to tell you that they want to kill you, and you better go and, see if you can find somewhere else to be. Does that make sense, Vincent?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this. You mentioned that the cops are two-faced. I totally agree. The cops deliberately lie to people. They tell them that they can make deals that they have no authority to make. So, if you rat on, your friends and people we think are involved as co-conspirators, then we'll make it easy on you. We'll make sure that you get off with a lighter sentence, or we'll, make this deal. They have no authority to make that deal. So we know that the cops lie. Now, but what is the difference between the mafia and the cops? My impression is the mafia does not generally lie as the blue team does. The mafia is more truthful.
No, they don't. No, they don't, because I'll tell you why they don't. If you get a liar shows up in the mafia, somebody's going to discern that they're a liar, and they're not going to live very long, because they want people that they can deal with on a regular basis who are not going to turn on them and mess up some really, really important deal down the track. So they're generally pretty ruthless in weeding out people who are going to be a problem. They're pretty discerning at seeing who's going to be a problem, and they're pretty ruthless at dealing, weeding them out. And usually the ones who are total scumbags, who end up making deals with the police, the only reason they end up surviving is because they've made deals with the police, but they don't realize that in the end the cops are going to turn on them anyway. And that's just how it is. And, oh my gosh, I really feel I ought to go here. Back 300 years ago when I was George Wilson, I made that mistake. I did a deal with Shealy Ogle, and I ratted out the whole of Bartholomew Roberts' ship. I turncoated on all of them. I turned evidence that saw most of them hang. Okay, probably about half of them hanged, and all of the really, really senior ones hanged. And I thought that I was going to get a royal pardon and save my own neck. What I should have done when I saw Val Ashplant, who was sitting next to me, Valentine Ashplant, was another senior member of the crew. He had almost succeeded in getting his cuffs off. When I'd seen that, I should have asked him if he could help me get my cuffs off too. That's what I should have done, but I didn't. I saw him getting his cuffs off in that lifetime. And I made arrangements to speak with Shealy Ogle privately, and I turned on all of them in that lifetime. I would never, ever do that again, because you know what happened after that, Vincent? Shealy Ogle took that evidence that I had given him, used it to, condemn most of or all of the House of Lords except for one, okay, besides myself. And then what he did was he put us all on a ship and sent us back to England on half rations, okay? And I, in particular, in that lifetime, had some type of a tropical disease. And if you look in the history books will say that the tropical disease killed me, not starvation. But it wasn't even starvation that killed me. In that lifetime, I'll tell you the past life memory that I have. I think I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again anyway because it's instructive. I have a past life memory of being drowned in that lifetime, okay? And, when I was given the opportunity to plea bargain, I should have given habeas corpus at that time and been put on bail, but I wasn't. I was slapped in irons. What they did when I became ill with the sickness, I went into like an almost comatose state, and Shalona Ogle made sure that when I was in this comatose state, I was wrapped up in chains in a tarpaulin, and I was thrown overboard alive, and I drowned in the sea with tremendous pressure, and, just absolutely horrifying thing to have to deal with, of getting drowned in the depths of the sea.
Hold that thought. So, Guineith, my take on this is that the mafia, regardless of what continent the mafia may be on, the mafia is respected because they have a code of conduct and they are not liars. Whereas if you compare them to the other organized crime syndicate like the Blue Team, they're not respected because they do lie. What's your take on the code of conduct? Did I say that in accordance to your understanding as well?
I would say they do. I would say the mafia do have a code of conduct wherever you go. Okay? And it's a fairly standard one. It's don't mess in other people's business. Okay? It's don't rat, don't lie, and try and be honourable in your dealings. Okay? So if you say that you're going to, do an in-court deal with someone, for instance, then make sure that the goods are, as you said, that they were going to be, and that they are goods of a good quality. Because if they're not goods of a good quality, and if they're not the quantity that you said that they were going to be, you're probably going to have a short life. And that's a big incentive to having things as you thought they would be. Does that make sense, Vincent?
Sure, it absolutely does, and that's that's the way I deal with people. For example, yesterday I called a man up and I said that I would like 70,000 pounds of lime delivered. He said, okay, he could do it. I said, all right. So I would meet him at a certain place on the farm, right by the gate, and I would lead him across the field to exactly where I want these dump trucks of lime delivered. He showed up, delivered the first load on time, exactly what I expected, carefully. And I said, okay, would you like me to write a check? He said, no, let me get the next load. I think I can make it before the ground softens up. Let me go and let me get the next load and I'll bring it back. And when he was done, I wrote the check, thanked him very much. And there you have it. He did exactly what he said he would do. I did exactly what he expected me to do. And he got paid. Everything's good. He never said, hey, is this a good payment? Do I have to worry about cashing this check? Can I do it now? There was no discussion of that. He believed that it was a good payment. I believe that he got the lime where we agreed on. I believe that the weight is right. Everything was good. No problems. Now, had anything gone wrong, maybe a short load, maybe not the weight that I thought I was paying for, we'd have a problem. If my check didn't clear, I'm sure he'd call me up and say, Vinny, the check didn't clear. Can you do something? I would fix it. But that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because I don't write bad checks. So everything's good, just like the mafia would expect, just as you described. And that's how I operate.
Yeah,
that's how we deal with all of our... Yes.
Oh, sorry. You carry on.
No. Go ahead. Ladies first.
Okay. I was just going to say, I think this is probably a reason why when you moved to the local area, there was some discussion about, what manner of person you were, because I don't know if you know this or not. I think I've actually mentioned this to you once or twice. But back in the old country, back in Italy, the Finellis actually are a rather prominent mafia family. And they have been for probably several thousand years. So what you are doing is basically acting out the epigenetics that are in your family. And that's not to say that this Vincent Finelli has anything to do with the mob. But if you meet a Finelli that actually comes from Italy, you'd better behave yourself.
And I'm not going to say whether I'm in the mob or whether I'm not in the mob.
I wouldn't expect you to.
But you know what's interesting? All of our neighbors are absolutely 100% convinced that we are the mafia. And that's okay. That's okay. I don't have time to change their minds, nor do I want to change their minds. And they could be right. We'll be right back. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Guineith, I was reading an article, investmentwatchblog.com. It's quite apropos to what we've been talking about here at USA Prepares for years. There's a sheriff in Kentucky, Martin County, Kentucky. Sheriff John Kirk delivered a message to the inhabitants of Martin County, Kentucky. This is in the Appalachian Mountains. And he said, quote, "Law enforcement, as we have known for the last 4 years, will not exist. We are broke. Lock your doors, load your guns, and get a barking, biting dog. If the sheriff's office can't protect you, who will?" End quote. Let me read this one more time. I want to make sure the entire class gets this. This is important. We have arrived. The Civil War has begun. Here we go. Law enforcement, as we have known for the last 4 years, will not exist. We are broke. Lock your doors, load your guns, and get a barking, biting dog. If the sheriff's office can't protect you, who will? End quote. So that's what the sheriff is saying here in the United States of America. Class, I suggest you consider, if you're up to it, that you consider doing exactly what the sheriff, John Kirk, has said. Get a dog, a barking, biting dog. Would I say that if we didn't have barking, biting dogs? No, I would never say that if we didn't have them. We do. Would I say load your guns if we weren't locked and cocked? No. We are. We know that the villages in the United States are broke. Do we lock our doors? Absolutely. We have dogs outside and inside. They work as a team. They're the alarm. There's some of the alarms. There are other alarms as well. We're ready. We don't want to live like this, but these are the times we now live in. What the sheriff's office is saying is what Sheriff David Clark, who I interviewed, met at a live remote broadcast we did years ago, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He said, get a gun. The sheriff's office can't protect you. Sheriff John Kirk just said the same thing. They can't protect us. They're broke. Now, why are they broke? Well, obviously it's mismanagement. Because the government corporations have been stealing from us for a long time at the threat of the muzzle of a gun. They want more and more money, tax money in every way imaginable, and they've squandered it. They've managed it. Now they're broke. and they can't do what we hired them to do. Well, maybe that's not all that bad because they've been out of control. So it's up to you to protect yourself, your family. And I mentioned at the end of yesterday's broadcast, I'm looking forward to having George in New Hampshire come back, and we're going to teach you about how to get the right gun for you. We're going to do that again if George is able to clear his schedule. He's the guy to do it. So we're going to talk about guns, and we're going to talk about what you should consider. Because, class, if you don't have one and you think you can handle one, you got to do it really soon. Like in about 49 minutes at the end of this broadcast. I'm very serious.
Yep.
Gwyneth, you have any comments?
I would tend to agree, you know.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm watching what's going on out and about here in Victoria and also in America as well, and I really appreciate the honesty of that sheriff. You know, I wish that the local blue team were as honest as that. But it's self-evident that the local blue team around here have descended into being nothing more than a highwayman's cartel, and I've spoken about that before. And I'll tell you how it's going to go, because we as a society have been here before. We haven't been here for 300 or 400 years. But if you wind the clock back and you go back in time 300 and 400 years ago, okay, to the time of the English Civil War. So this is back before there was an America, okay? What you see is you see a landscape that is really quite a hostile place. Back in the day, the highwaymen ran the show, okay? If you had a farmstead, you could not travel safely unless you had really, really good friends on the inside of the highwayman cartel. And then you could travel easily and anywhere because the highwayman cartel was vast, okay? And, you know, but unless you had the friends in the highwayman cartel, you had no chance of being able to travel even just a few miles, even just 5 or 10 miles down the road without getting robbed, because the roads were infested. And your only other option for being able to travel safely along those roads was to have a really, really, really fast horse. And it could be argued that that's actually where the thoroughbred racehorse came from, was because it came from a need for there to be a really, really fast horse developed to, you know, basically get people from A to B quickly and safely and without being chased down by anybody. But today it's actually worse because you've got a highwayman cartel operating out there, okay? And if you needed to travel 5 miles down the road back in the day, you might decide, yeah, I've got a fast horse, I think I can run this gauntlet. You know, I think I can go and visit my neighbour for the afternoon. I'll saddle up my fast horse. If you wanted to go out in a cart, then you'd better have a lot of money with you, because if you didn't have a lot of money with you, you might as well just die, because you're probably going to be killed back in the day. But these days, back in the day, if you could outrun the highwayman, then you'd probably get away from him. But these days, if you try and outrun the highwaymen, they're going to chase you down, and they're going to get the number plates off your vehicle. They're going to follow you home, and they're going to surround you with guns blazing, tasers, batons, and want to know why you were running away from them. And you might not survive that process. Does that make sense, Vincent?
What you're saying is absolutely correct. I happen to be in the village of Amelia, Virginia. And I was meeting with the superintendent of schools, at the school board office. And right after the meeting, I was going to the elementary school. That's about a mile away at the most. And I was there every week for years. I was well known in the village of Amelia. And I drove a vehicle that was a little different from everybody else's, so it kind of stood out. At the time, it happened to be a Volvo station wagon, turbocharged 740, Volvo 740. So it was an Italian-designed Volvo. It's really neat looking. Probably the best looking station wagon ever made, in my opinion. Well, up ahead, there were red and blue lights. I thought, wow, I don't really want to go through this and wait for this clearing. I'm on the clock. These guys are paying me to do this. I need to not be detained and waiting for whatever this roadblock is. I didn't know if it was an accident. I didn't know what kind of an emergency it was. So as I approached maybe an eighth of a mile away, I did a K-turn, and I was the only car approaching. Did a K-turn, went the other way. The next thing that happened is I'm being chased by the police.
They followed you.
Yeah. What are you doing? What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. I'm just trying to avoid whatever accident is up there. Whatever you guys are doing, you don't need my help, that's for sure. So I'm leaving and going to the school right on the other side of whatever you guys are doing. That's what I'm doing. And I had to prove who I was because he thought I was trying to get away from their gauntlet. That's one of the reasons why I moved from Virginia. So what I'm saying is I have experiences in so many of the things that we talk about here at USA Prepares. And that's what we do. We tell you stories about what's happened in our lives that coincide and add exclamation points to some of the things that you've read. And that's exactly what happened to me. And it's no fun when these cops come out with guns because they don't like the fact that you don't want to wait for them to do whatever they're doing. And you don't have an obligation to wait for a gauntlet. You don't have an obligation to be processed. But they think you do. Those guys, they think that they can command your respect. That's not how respect is earned. I don't have 100% respect for everybody I meet. Respect is earned. It's not granted, it's earned. But the police demand it. They're not getting it from me because of their behavior. When we come back, Mark in Illinois has been waiting patiently on the line, pacing back and forth. I can see him from here. Mark will be joining us right after the few commercial announcements that we're going to hear. We'll be right back. Guineith, we have Mark in Illinois on the line, patiently waiting. Mark, welcome.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Hey, Gwennon, I got a story that probably fits into what you're talking about because of what you even asked last week about the SCOTA. And first of all, I was going to say, you're talking about time travel. I've done that. I'm in the here and now. And the other thing is that you were talking about the syndicate, and I think it's like a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. And you're talking about these people, how they're in these wars and fighting for whatever they're fighting for, and killing one another. That's the way I see Satan's kingdom. I don't think it's going to stand because it is divided against itself. But I had this. If you look in Jeremiah, I think I could answer your question about SCOTA. And if you look at Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 10, it says, "See, I have this day set you over the nations and over the kingdoms to root out, to pull down, to overthrow, and destroy, and to build and to plant." And that was Jeremiah's mission, was to prophesy against the house of Judah. But at the same time, Zedekiah's sons were destroyed, and he had two daughters. And Jeremiah the prophet was taken. He was kidnapped, and he was taken down to Egypt. Gedaliah was a man that was appointed by Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon to be over Judea, and they murdered him, this man Ishmael.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't he assassinated? He was assassinated, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was assassinated by this man called Ishmael, and Jeremiah was taken down. He was taken captive, kidnapped, and taken down into Egypt, and then he escaped. And he had the two daughters. One of the daughters he had with him was the daughter of Zedekiah. Her name was Scota, and also known as in the Irish folklore as what's the word? I'm trying to think of her name, she was taken by Jeremiah, and Jeremiah had a special cargo waiting because he was appointed over the priests. And so I was down at the Dead Sea in 2009. I was researching, and I was down there, and all the temple treasure was buried in the Dead Sea area, the Ark of the Covenant, called it, and the Cave of Color, and all the temple treasure and the Tabernacle of Moses. Well, all that was loaded upon a ship in the Gulf of Aqaba, the Red Sea. And it was when he escaped out of Egypt with the two daughters of Zedekiah, they had all this cargo, they had these ships waiting, and he got on the ship and he came to Ireland, and he dropped off one of the daughters along the way. Tethi was the one he brought to, that was the Irish folklore that he brought to Ireland to marry the Scottish, into these twin Scottish kings. And so that was the story of, after he left Ireland to drop off, because there were the two branches of Judah, the house of Judah, which is Perez and Zerah. Well, the two Irish kings were the branch of Zerah. And after Jeremiah dropped off this woman, that he was in charge of, who was daughter of Zedekiah, king of Judah, the house of Judah, the line of Perez, he came to America, and he dropped off a very interesting cargo here, too, called the Ark of the Covenant and the Tabernacle of Moses and the Temple Treasure, which is buried here in the United States. I just want to know. Okay. It's like treasure, you're talking about pirates, too. I mean, they weren't pirates, they were priests. A different piece.
Yeah.
I would just want to know about, if you knew that about the Scota as far as the Tethi, the Irish folklore concerning Tethi, and that's how she came out of Egypt because of Jeremiah. That's how she came out of Egypt, because Jeremiah was kidnapped and taken down into Egypt.
I haven't much studied that story, actually. I've heard of the story of Scota, but I haven't studied it in depth at this time. Now, I believe that the Templar treasures, I don't know what the Templar treasures exactly consist of, but I know that they are probably...
Guineith, hold that thought. We're going to the bottom of the hour break. Mark, thank you so much. Guineith, I got an email from Rich Sheaben, and he was so impressed with your writing and your writing ability that he thought that you should hire out as a ghostwriter. I totally agree. I've been saying that your writing is outstanding for as long as I've seen it, and Rich Sheaben got a chance to see it, and I believe he's saying exactly the same thing. Have you considered being a ghostwriter?
I have. If there's anyone who wants to hire me as a ghostwriter, I'd be happy to do that, And the thing is that I can write over a wide spectrum of different genres. So I can write reportage, I can write copy, I can write fiction, I can write romance, and I can write saucy romance as well, which not everybody can. But at the moment, like I say, that work would be welcome. If there's anybody out there in the class who has that sort of work, then feel free to contact me. That's Guineith, Guineith at gmail.com.
Gwyneth, yeah,
and
Gwyneth at
I'll get back to you about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you'd like a free copy of her latest newsletter, just to see what we're talking about, the style, the clarity, send an email to Guineith at gmail.com and mention that you'd like a free copy, see what it's like, and she'll be glad to send you one. Guineith, I've been thinking about the government tracking our every move. And it's not just in the United States. It's on many continents, probably all of them. Well, I've been thinking about transactions. So, for example, let me just give you an example, a simple example. Let's say a farmer had some extra hay to sell, and he decided that he was going to sell that hay. So he puts an ad in some publication or on the internet or Craigslist or wherever it may be. And he gets contacted, and the transaction is arranged. The farmer meets with the buyer. The buyer brings a trailer, and the farmer loads the hay on the trailer, and the buyer secures the load and pays the farmer. Let's say it's in cash, since they don't know each other. So now we have a cash transaction. And the buyer says, I'd appreciate a receipt, thank you very much. So the farmer writes him a receipt that he bought X amount of hay for X price. Now, the buyer of the hay is going to use that purchase as a tax deduction to offset income. Naturally, makes sense. It's the way the tax rules are written here in the United States. So that means that the farmer who sells the hay probably ought to report that income, because the guy who bought the hay is going to report the expense. Makes sense, right? So the government has a gun to everybody's head saying, we want you to pay as much as possible in taxes, and you're going to have to prove that your deductions are valid, bona fide, like with a receipt. All right. So now both parties report to the government that the one bought the hay, the other sold the hay. So let's fast forward to the very near future. Cash goes away. Now we have electronic transactions only. There is no cash, no checks, no cash. We have just electronic transactions. So now both farmers complete the transaction, but now there is no need to report anything because the government already knows. They already know about the transaction. They know who, they know what, they know how much, they know when. That means to me that the government corporation can charge any tax they want on anything they want until we revolt. And they probably will. They probably will charge us more and more and more, because there's nothing to hold them back. They'll just do it. What are your thoughts on that, Guineith?
It's going back to the days of Robin Hood. If anyone has ever read the story of Robin Hood, okay, this is basically, he was the son of a nobleman. His father died. He inherited the estate. And the crown comes along and takes a death tax, and basically, which equals the whole sum of his father's estate, which means that he's now homeless. So he does what every good little homeless earl does, and he turns highwayman to fund himself, and he gets a gang of, suitably disenfranchised people around him who have nothing better to do other than hang around in the forest and, rob His Majesty's men as they go through the forest, which makes the forest impassable, which is getting back to what we were saying in the first place. This is how it always happens, okay? The His Majesty's men these days are the blue team. Okay? And I predict, I'm not planning anything, I'm not saying this, I'm just saying this is how history works. Okay? This is how history works. His Majesty's men these days are the local blue team, wherever you are, and sooner or later, the local people are going to decide that they have had enough of these blue team guys completely impoverishing them, and they're going to start taking action against them, because that's historically what always happens. You can push people so far and no further. That is just what happens. And if you don't, then what you get is you can get a complete shutdown of the whole society to where nobody's moving anywhere. Because, they're not going to go to work, because why should they go to work when, 3/4 of what they're earning is taken in taxes? Why should they even bother? The programming will keep them going, will keep them getting into the car, going on the highway to a certain degree, but they're eventually going to have a stuff-it moment. And do you know what a stuff-it moment is, Vincent?
Please share that with us.
It's when you say, stuff it, I'm not doing this anymore. Hey, like that guy from that movie, and he says, I've had enough, I'm not going to take it anymore. Or the company shuts down, that the government hammers commerce so much that the company goes broke, and they've got no choice. They've got no job anymore, so they've got to do something to, keep themselves at home, and so they're going to, either start growing vegetables and keeping chickens, which I hope people do that, okay? I really want people to grow vegetables and keep chickens. Or they're going to find some other way to generate income. And that some other way to generate income, depending on the individual, might involve, some sort of crime, and some sort of robbery and violence. And this is just how it goes. This is, historically, it's happened over and over and over and over again, and it always begins with excessive government taxation. They tax the daylights out of the people until they can't stand it anymore. They operate in such dishonourable fashion that people actually forget what honour is, and then the people, they begin to rob, they begin to destroy stuff, they begin to not look after things and just have disrespect until somebody comes along and stands up and says, "Oi, yeah, you fellas, we've got to have some respect here, and if you don't have respect, then I'm going to show you some respect. I'm going to show you what respect is by enforcing some respect around here, and you're not going to keep doing this anymore." This is historically what happens. And then that guy generally gets some opposition from the previous cartel management, which is often the government. And it may take 2 or 3 or 4 of these people to stand up and say, "Oi, we're just not, we've had enough, we're not doing it." Before you get one who finally manages to successfully stand up to the previous ratbags that have been in charge. And when you get this one fellow who stands up, then everybody gathers around him, and then they determine that this is a no-go area for the local blue team. They set up the no-go area, and they begin to self-govern, and from that point on, that community begins to prosper. And they begin to organise, they remember what honour is. It's a cycle. it's repeated over and over and over again in history. And unfortunately, I don't think we're anywhere near the tail end of that yet. I think that we've only just, patted this dog on the head. We're nowhere near the tail end of it yet, We're still at the pointy end that has teeth. And does that make sense, Vincent?
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people are going to get bitten, and they're going to get bitten hard. And there are people out there, and they have the intuition, they have the cultural memory to know how to be that leader within their own community. But they have to have the willingness to be able to stand up and take the risk, because there is a risk. There's a huge risk, because the blue team's not going to like it when the people that are out there that have this task, when they stand up, the blue team's not going to like it.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that when we come back from this break with Guineith Isaacs. Guineith, the person that you were talking about in the movie Network, it was a 1976 movie, and the character that you've quoted had a name, Howard Beale, in the movie. And his quote is, quote, you've got to say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do. End quote. That was the quote. And that's where we are. That's where people who are paying attention are right now. We're furious. We don't like it. We see the cracks. We see the Civil War has already started. And now, as you were talking about, the blue team. The blue team now feels threatened. Why do they feel threatened? Well, because they've threatened the villagers. They've arrested villagers. The breadwinners of families have been put in jail. The families have fallen apart. They've lost their homes. They've lost their farms. They've lost their businesses. They've lost so much. And then the blue team wants to know why people are threatening the cops. Well, what's happening, and we predicted this years ago, we said this is the natural fallout of what the blue team has been doing. Well, what's happening is the families of the blue team are now in harm's way because the people of the villagers are so angry, and this is across the country. The villagers, the families of them are so angry that they are threatening the families of the cops. Okay, so what they're saying is, you go to work, we're going to your house when you're at work. The same kind of thing that the cops pulled on the villagers, bashing down their doors in the wee hours of the morning.
They've been doing to us for years, you know. And there's a documentary out there. It's called Real Caribbean Pirates. It's on YouTube. It was originally on the History Channel. And, I've got that uploaded to my computer, basically, because it's such a good documentary about the Caribbean pirates. And at one stage at the end of it, there's two quotes that are in this film. Okay, they're script lines that are attributed to Bartholomew Roberts in the film. One of them is, "We're coming for you, Martinique." And that has to do with the fact that, that basically Bartholomew Roberts hung the governor of Martinique from the yardarm of his own ship, and he hung him by the neck until he was dead. And the other one is, they've been hanging us for long enough, let's go and hang them for a change. That's a quote from the film, okay? That's not an incitement to violence. That's a quote from a History Channel documentary on Bartholomew Roberts, but it reflects how they felt at the time. The Roberts ship did what they did, not so much to go out and make themselves rich, but to quote Howell Davis, who was the captain before Roberts, he says, to avenge ship captains who have for many years been providing us with not enough wages, not enough food, too much work, and that basically we've had enough. And when ship captains treated their crews like that, then the crews would be inclined to just revolt, take over the ship, and begin running it for their own profitable basis. Okay, and that's basically how it is, or not. There are occasions where captains treated their crews badly. In particular, Captain Bligh and Fletcher Christian. Fletcher Christian did mutiny on the Bounty, but what happened was that he, took the ship. He set Bligh adrift with, 17 of his dearest and nearest. And then, Fletcher Christian just wanted to sail away to a tropical island and have a peaceful life. And indeed, that's what he did, except he didn't get the peaceful life because his crew got into fights until there was only one of them left, unfortunately. But they did set up a community with the children, and those people are still there today. But we've had enough. We really, really have.
And we're out of time.
And I'm sure I'm not alone.
No, you're not alone. And Guineith, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.